Okay, perfect. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. For me, as I was thinking about what do we talk about, the key facets of technology today are multiple. But the key challenge is, how do we think about where we presently are, and how do we think about where technology is actually going? And then how do you trace the value therein in order to derive a benefit? So as we think about this, I think what's critically important is to provide context, then think about what does the technology enable and what are the key tenets to that, and then ultimately get to a point of where you think about skills and culture and all of those types of things in order to win with technology. So maybe whilst we're getting the charts ready, just to share with you, so I'm Ziaad Suleman. I'm the CEO for a company called Cassava Technologies. I run 5 businesses, and I'll take you through some of the interconnectedness of how those 5 businesses come together, not only for digital infrastructure, but also in terms of how do you provide value-added services and solutions. Over and above that, I sit as the chair of technology for South Africa at BRICS. So in all of those discussions internationally, we have some interesting dialogues. But in addition to that, we also have to think about, digital skills and public-private growth, etc. So for that, I sit in the presidency or on 2 presidential commissions that deal with those things. So at any point in time, if there's any area of interest that you might have, I know time is limited, you're welcome to chat afterwards. So in terms of the context, are you going to change the slides for me, or is this working? Is working? Okay, perfect. Are you going to change? I'll use this? Okay, perfect. So as I was thinking about the context and sharing with you a build-up to the 4th Industrial Revolution towards where we're going with technology, what is interesting for me is that if you follow the path of technology from the 1st Industrial Revolution, which was largely 1800 to 1900, it took approximately 100 years, in that particular process. And that process was largely powered by mechanization and steam power, etc. The 2nd Industrial Revolution then took us from 1900 to approximately 1970. But the key point around this is the fact that between the 1st and the 2nd, you already saved 30 years. And in that 2nd Industrial Revolution, that was largely around mass production in order to try and speed up the amount that you actually produce. But then if we fast forward to the 3rd Industrial Revolution, which is largely 1970 to about 2000, you'll see we went from 100 to 70 to 30. And in that 30 years was largely as a result of IT systems and the internet. And today where we find ourselves largely from 2000 to 2025, it's all about converged ecosystems. So when you look at the 4th Industrial Revolution, what is it really? It's a convergence of multiple technologies all coming together. So let me give you an example. If you think about networks, if you think about mobile, if you think about applications, if you think about things like blockchain, if you think about things like mobile banking, all of that coming together in a converged ecosystem is what the 4th Industrial Revolution is actually about. But the key question is not about the present. It's what should you be focusing on as we move forward to the next industrial revolution. You can maybe just change the slides for me, right? Thanks. And this is where we have to start pivoting and thinking about, so what does tech actually bring us? And the world going towards the 5th Industrial Revolution is all about hyper-personalization. And what I want you to think about is, in order to utilize AI to get the best outputs, you have to think about how do you service your customer in real time with value. Now we're living in a complex technology world where society and people actually demand a lot in real time. Because your consumer or your customer is not waiting for you to say, can you just pause for 5 minutes while I find the answer? We don't live in that world anymore. If you want to buy something and you have to wait 5 minutes before your order is processed, that doesn't work. Thanks. Sorry? Okay, super. Thank you. Therefore, this fifth industrial revolution is largely around personalization. It's largely around how do you make sure that you use connected ecosystems to get the best outputs. And part of this means that you have to think about what are the core things that you should be focused on. So there are many trends in the world. But the key things that keep coming up over and over again are really these issues around AI and machine learning, the issue of security. And think about security, right? In a world of AI today, where people utilize a basic premise of like a chat GPT, type something in, get an answer, get a prompt, etc. In the world of security, you have to be even more advanced. That's where you have to have things like crypto, you have to have things like lattice cryptography, you need a whole lot of other instrumentation in order to do that. But in order to get the benefit of this, you need the speed of the infrastructure. You then need the systems and the tooling. So therefore, it's really this convergence of all these different things coming together in order to provide an output. So automation and basic AI is at the very elementary piece of it. But what you really need to think about is, for example, in a manufacturing scenario, if you were running a plant, now you had, a plant that's dependent on very few people. In order to get that working, you need a multiplicity of all these things. So you need a good network because you cannot have buffering. You need proper tooling and intelligence in the programming in order to make sure that that runs. And if you fast forward through all the steps, what you end up with in today's world is agentic AI. And agentic AI is all about intelligence. This is the point of where the code and the machine knows exactly what to do in all scenarios. So if a plant is actually getting to a point of where the sensors fail, then automatically it knows what decision to make without stopping. And what it will do, it will automatically change into a different discourse in order to provide the output. This is the level of intelligence that technology is being utilized for. What we need to do is make sure that society keeps up with technology, because what you cannot have is you cannot have a chasm between technology and people. If you end up in that state, then you have a real problem, because what you're starting to do is create marginalization. If you create marginalization, you have social impact that you cannot keep up with. You have people that will become totally devoid of the digital economy, and those people then become dependent on the fiscus. If they become dependent on the fiscus, you and I and all the people that pay tax have got to pay more in order to make sure that the social cohesion of society is intact. So these things are fundamentally important. It's not only about technology. It is about the way we operate. It is about the way we run our practices in our businesses. It's the way we educate our children, and it's the way we think. So therefore, it is fundamentally important that all of these things, whether in a small way or in a big way, you have to think about them. So the businesses that I run are these 5. And I'm not here to tell you about the businesses. I just want to show you the connectedness of an ecosystem, because it shows you the relevance of how you need to think about your own enterprise and how you operate. So Liquid has 30,000 kilometers of fiber, satellite, microwave, subsea cables, and everything else from a connectivity perspective. We provide Vox, Vumatel, Rain, all of these guys all buy from us. But this is the start of carrying the data, and that's the point. You need to be able to carry the data with predictability and certainty. Then if you move to Africa data centers, you have to have a place where you can land the data and keep it safe and secure. Because in this world, when you think you're going into your bank account, to be quite honest, you're coming into our data center. So all the big banks, all the hyperscalers, all of them come into this environment. So if you have a place to land it and a place to carry it, how do you differentiate and bring the value in between, which is where all of you are certainly playing and thinking about. And as we go forward and we think about how do we build this, what's important to think about is skills and culture. So in your environment as you run your enterprise, there's no doubt that there's lots of different things, whether it be inflation, geopolitics, or whatever else, that's creating some level of challenge in your environment. And there's no doubt that there's technology trends that are driving transformation amongst all of this chaos. So in this world, the world of quantum computing, in order to process AI, is critically important. I want to dwell here for a second. So if we can think about it, right, in this world of data, you have what I call the 3 V's. You have the volume of data, you have the velocity of the data, and you have the variety of the data. Now let's just pause there and think about this. So the volume of the data in your own world is already immense. People can't keep up with the amount of your email, your social media, your family groups, all of the different sources of the volume coming in, you can't keep up. Then if you take the velocity, the speed at which it's coming to you, it's hard to keep up. And then the variety in an enterprise of where you have ERP systems, you have you have multiple sources. So to keep up with all of that, what you need is supercompute. Because without the supercompute, you cannot get the hyper-personalization. Because when people are expecting there to be real-time outputs, you can't go into an environment where the compute cannot process that. So this is the reason why you need, for example, what we are doing in the form of GPUs, which are gaming processing units, to keep the data in the country in order to process the AI requirements. And as we think about it, there's no doubt that all the different industries are in fact being transformed. So whether you are in financial services or mining or otherwise, it is all changing. And as all of those things change, so does the job landscape. But the reality is there's a place for everybody in the world. So as we think about how do you remain relevant and essential, it is important to build a skill set that is actually congruent with what you're trying to achieve. The lady in Limpopo that's planting maize certainly doesn't care about the digital economy. But what we can't do is leave her behind in our journey. And the way we connect the dots is simply, we need to be able to have people in that environment that utilize the data and AI to educate her in terms of when is it the best time to plant the crop? What is the best soil conditions? When you've developed your crop, how do I then take it and pool it so that we can use an e-commerce platform to get the best price? This is how we have to create connected ecosystems in order to drive an output. So in Africa, we're very blessed. You know, we're not like all the other parts of the world which are already mature. We have room for growth. And as we have room for growth, therein lies opportunity. And to complement that, we have a young population. But the key thing is we have to educate our people across the board in terms of doing the right things. So part of something that I'm involved in is called the Collective X, which is a project that's run out of the presidency. It's to solve the digital skills divide. And part of this is thinking about how do you solve on the basis of having the right demand matching the right supply. So have a look at this video. I think you'll find it interesting.
We have a significant demand for digital skills in South Africa. We utilize much more skills outside of South Africa than what we hire locally. Yet we have a significant unemployment challenge here in this country.
Over the last 2 years, we've been listening and learning to try and understand why the digital skills supply chain is not performing the way it should. Top of the funnel. What happens at schools? How do we create a passion and an interest for young people around digital skills?
Instead of having individual players trying to solve this problem on their own, we pull together the different players within this ecosystem, pulling together the funds that are required and focus on the key skills that this economy is looking for.
So we need a training and skilling system that is highly responsive, that is very agile, and also that meets the standards, that we have a way of adjudicating whether the training being offered actually meets the requirements and standards of employers. And in doing all of these things, we are really gearing this ecosystem to not only double the output of our national skills over the next 1 to 2 years, but to 10x that over the next 10 years.
Skills form the cornerstone of these types of models. What we do need to do is make sure that there's beneficial skills output matching the demand of what industry requires, and through that matching, making sure that there's enhancement not only of the people, reducing unemployment, but also making sure that we get a greater output of growth in business.
So it is urgent, it is critical that we get into and fix this problem to enable our companies here in South Africa to compete globally, because the next era of competition is the era around digital. It is really now up to us as business people to join and make this effort successful, not just for our own selves, but for South Africa and for Africa.
So the key purpose of that is really to start reflecting on how do you win. And it is impossible for any organization in today's world to win alone. This is why you have to have a connected ecosystem, whether it be through education, schools or universities or otherwise, into smaller businesses, into larger businesses, into NPOs. But this broader ecosystem is what flourishes, and therein lies the issue of partnerships and trust and growing together. And this is critically important because there is no monopoly on skills. What we need is to make sure that we utilize each other to get the best output. And as we think about that, this issue of hyper-personalization will keep coming up, because those days of just having somebody's, phone number where you send them a happy birthday, Ziaad, those days are gone, right? What people want is proper tailor-made, relevant information. Otherwise, you're wasting their time. Instead of enhancing your brand value, you actually diminish it. And that's why what's critically important here is that data insights leading to actionable outputs, equaling revenue on income and return on investments and EBITDA and growth, etc., is certainly the way to start thinking about it. I'm going to move along just because of time. The key thing that I want to get to here is just to show you. So if you think about the benefits of hyper-personalization, talking to your audience, remaining relevant and essential, thinking about how you enhance your own efficiency and generate optimum efficiency and outputs. So that optimization is ultimately what becomes the catalyst. As you think about what is AI, I just want to leave you with this for 30 seconds. So for us, we're developing an AI factory, but think about the complexity of what an AI factory is. All your culture, all your systems, all your IP, all your data being infused and ingested into a factory that works on the following basis. All the data comes in. Now you need the network power, you need the storage, you need the compute, you need the tools, you need the systems, you need all of the different mechanisms of applications, plus you need the management system, plus you need the security, plus you need all these things. Now you tell me, how many companies have the ability of doing this on their own? Very few. That's why you need the connected ecosystem. And when all of this comes together, you then get a use case or a domain in the back end which ultimately solves problems using AI. You have to measure success, so therefore think about what you actually want to achieve in order to drive the outcome. Okay, so just to wrap up, you have no choice but to embrace technology. Because if you're not doing it, your competition or other people are. You have to think about the hyper-personalization to speak to the audience of what you are trying to achieve. The well-being of your people is critically important. Do not assume that everybody grows at the same rate and everybody's starting from the same base. Therefore, it is extremely important as leaders to bring people along rather than just try and discard them because they're not at the right point. So think about your skills and your culture and your programs in order to achieve that, in order to drive inclusivity. And ultimately, if you're able to get the harmonization of all of these things, then that is the recipe of success. So I'm sorry that it's quick, but there's a lot to get through and a lot to talk about. But I'll be around for a short while after. If anybody has any interest or any questions, happy to chat. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.